Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are returning once again to the manufacturer that needs no introduction. The house whose green crown has come to represent, more completely and more universally than any other symbol in the watch industry, the idea that a wristwatch can be simultaneously a precision instrument, a design icon, and a lifelong companion that outlasts every trend, every competitor, and every passing moment of fashion. We are talking about Rolex. But today's list is one of the most diverse and most carefully considered Rolex selections we have ever put together. A journey that takes us from the purest and most elemental expression of the oyster philosophy, all the way to a watch whose design has divided opinion, generated fascination, and earned an entirely devoted following through the absolute certainty of its own character. Along the way, we visit a vintage Daytona whose movement changed the course of chronograph history, a two-tone diamond dial Datejust of extraordinary glamour, and a pre-owned Pepsi GMT that represents one of the finest value plays in the entire Rolex secondary market. Every reference on today's list earns its place through design, engineering, heritage, or the kind of enduring desirability that only the rarest watches ever genuinely achieve. Let's get into it. Number 10. Rolex Oyster Perpetual 36-12E6000. The Rolex Oyster Perpetual 36 reference 12E6000 is the foundation upon which the entire Rolex philosophy rests. The watch that asks the most fundamental question in all of horology and answers it more completely and more convincingly than any competitor has ever managed. What does a watch look like when it is made entirely correctly, with no compromise, no cutting of corners, and no concession to cost, and then offered at the most accessible price point in the manufacturer's range? The answer is the Oyster Perpetual 36, and the answer is extraordinary. The 36mm oyster case is one of the most perfectly resolved case designs in the history of Swiss watchmaking, a form whose proportions have been arrived at through decades of continuous refinement rather than a single design decision, whose alternating brushed and polished surfaces achieve a transition sharpness that sets an industry standard, and whose screw-down crown and case back provide 100 meters of water resistance in a construction of complete mechanical integrity. The dial in its current incarnation is where the 12E6000 makes its most joyful and most compelling statement. Rolex has used this reference as the canvas for some of the most celebrated color work in the contemporary catalog, producing sunray brushed surfaces in turquoise blue, candy pink, yellow, coral red, and classic silver that achieve a depth and luminosity of finish at this price point that demands examination in person to be fully appreciated. None of these dials has a date window, none has a bezel treatment, and none needs either. The dial color is the entire visual identity of the watch, and Rolex has executed each option with a confidence and a quality of surface preparation that makes every configuration a genuinely desirable object in its own right. The caliber 3230 within, equipped with a 70-hour power reserve, chronergy escapement, parachrome hairspring, and superlative chronometer certification to within -2+2 seconds per day, provides movement performance identical to that found in Rolex references, costing many times more, because at Rolex the standard does not vary with the price. The Oyster Perpetual 36 is the Rolex that proves excellence has no minimum expenditure. The Rolex Oyster Perpetual 36 not 26,000 retails for approximately $6,150 are USD. Number 9. Rolex Datejust 36 11-16-200. The Rolex Datejust 36 reference. 11-16-200 is the watch that most completely and most faithfully carries the soul of the Datejust lineage, a reference that has been part of the Rolex catalog in one form or another since the Datejust's introduction in 1945, and that continues to represent the classical Datejust proposition with a completeness and a quiet authority that newer references, for all their technical advancement, do not entirely replicate. The 11-16-200 presents the Datejust in its most enduring configuration, a 36mm oyster case in oyster steel paired with a smooth bezel and an oyster bracelet, the combination that strips the Datejust of every accessory detail and allows the perfection of the case design and the beauty of the dial to speak entirely for themselves without interruption. The dial options across the 11-16-200 family cover the full range of classical Datejust expressions, from the warm champagne and silver sunbursts that have been associated with this reference since its earliest production years to the deep blue that has become the defining Datejust color of the current generation, each finished with applied hour markers of a quality and a precision of placement that reflects the exacting tolerances to which Rolex holds every component of every watch it produces. The caliber 3135 within is one of the most celebrated self-winding manufacture movements in Rolex's history. A caliber of outstanding long-term reliability and excellent accuracy, producing superlative chronometer performance with a 48-hour power reserve in a movement whose longevity in well-serviced examples has been proven across decades of continuous daily use worldwide. The 11/16-200 is the date just for the purist, the reference that knows exactly what it is and has no interest in being anything else. The Rolex Date Just 36, 11/16-200 retails pre-owned for approximately $4,500, $7,000 USDD. Number 8. Rolex Cellini Date 50515. The Rolex Cellini Date reference 50515 is the watch in the Rolex catalogs that surprises most people who encounter it. A timepiece of such serene, classical elegance and such deliberate restraint that it can feel almost startling when you first see it bearing the Rolex crown. Coming from a manufacturer whose identity in the popular imagination is defined by the boldness of the Submariner, the drama of the Daytona, and the prestige of the Day-Date. The Cellini exists to answer a different question entirely. Not what can a Rolex do in the ocean, or at altitude, or across time zones, but what does a Rolex look like when it is freed from every professional function and allowed to be simply, completely, and without qualification a dress watch of the highest order? The 50515 answers that question in an 18-karat Everose gold case of 39 millimeters, Rolex's proprietary rose gold alloy, developed for its exceptional color warmth and its superior resistance to fading over time, housing a white lacquered dial of extraordinary purity, whose applied Roman numerals and Breguet-style hands are finished to a standard of polish and proportion that bears direct comparison to the dress watches of Geneva's most celebrated independent manufacturers. The domed profile of both the crystal and the caseback gives the Cellini Date a three-dimensional presence on the wrist that flat-cased dress watches cannot achieve, a depth and a curvature that catches light from multiple angles simultaneously and creates a visual richness that the watch's surface simplicity might initially seem to preclude. The caliber 3165 within is a manufacturer self-winding movement regulated to superlative chronometer standards in a caliber whose finishing reflects the Cellini's formal ambitions without reservation. The 50515 is the Rolex for those who know the brand well enough to appreciate its quietest achievement. The Rolex Cellini Date 50515 retails for approximately $18,500 USD. Number 7. Rolex Sky Dweller 326934 Blue Dial. The Rolex Sky Dweller reference 326934 in Blue Dial is the most technically sophisticated watch that Rolex currently produces, a timepiece that introduces two complications of genuine horological substance into the catalog and delivers them through a system of mechanical ingenuity, so elegant and so completely resolved that it has earned the admiration of technically minded collectors across the entire spectrum of the watch industry since its introduction in 2012. The Sky Dweller houses an annual calendar and a dual time zone display in a combination that addresses the precise needs of the serious international traveler with a comprehensiveness and a practical intelligence that no other Rolex reference approaches. The annual calendar advances automatically through the varying lengths of each month, correcting for 30 and 31-day months without any manual intervention and requiring only a single date adjustment at the end of February each year, a complication of genuine daily utility delivered through a mechanism whose reliability over long service intervals Rolex has validated with the thoroughness that every complication in its catalog receives. The Blue Dial configuration of the 326934 is a particular achievement, a sunray-finished surface of deep shifting blue that transitions from midnight to brilliant cerulean as the viewing angle changes, paired with the white gold-fluted bezel in a combination of cool precious metal and warm color that creates a dial environment of exceptional sophistication and visual depth. The off-center 24-hour disc for the second time zone reads AM and PM with an immediacy and a clarity that practical use in real travel confirms as genuinely excellent. And the ring command bezel, a rotating bezel mechanically coupled to the movement through a patented interface, allows setting of all functions without additional pushers. The caliber 9001 self-winding manufacture movement within is among the most complex Rolex has ever produced, regulated to superlative chronometer standards with a 72-hour power reserve. The Sky Dweller 326934 in blue is the Rolex for those who travel far and think deeply. The Rolex Sky Dweller 326934 retails for approximately $18,600 USD. Number 6. Rolex Milgauss 11/16/400 white dial. Number 6. Rolex Milgauss 11/16/400 white dial. The Rolex Milgauss reference, 11/16/400 in white dial, is the most elegant and most understated configuration of one of the most technically singular watches in the entire Rolex professional sports collection. A version of the anti-magnetic icon that trades the striking drama of the Z blue dial for a cleaner, more classical presentation that reveals the Milgauss's extraordinary design character in a different and equally compelling light. The Milgauss was conceived in the 1950s for scientists and engineers working in environments of intense electromagnetic interference. The particle physicists and power engineers whose professions placed them in proximity to magnetic fields that would render conventional watch movements inaccurate. And the engineering solution Rolex developed remains as remarkable today as it was 70 years ago. A soft iron inner cage that completely shields the movement from external magnetic fields, allowing the Milgauss to withstand exposure of up to 1,000 Gauss without any effect on its superlative chronometer accuracy. The white dial of the 11/16/400 presents the Milgauss's design signatures with a crispness and a formality that the darker dial variants do not offer. The orange-tipped lightning bolt seconds hand, the Milgauss's most iconic and most immediately recognizable design detail, reads with particular clarity and graphic impact against the white surface, creating a dial composition of striking color contrast and confident originality. The orange-applied hour markers and the overall dial architecture give the white Milgauss a character that sits somewhere between a technical instrument watch and a refined everyday companion. Versatile in a way that the more dramatically colored variants are perhaps slightly less so. The caliber 3131 with its paramagnetic blue parachrome hairspring delivers superlative chronometer performance in the watch Rolex built for those who work at the frontier of human knowledge. The Rolex Milgauss 11/16/400 white dial retails for approximately $9,800 USD. Number 5. Rolex GMT Master the Requins 16710 Pepsi. The Rolex GMT Master II, reference 16710 in Pepsi configuration, is one of the finest pre-owned value propositions in the entire Rolex secondary market. A watch of outstanding quality, iconic design character, and deeply authentic tool watch heritage that is available at a price point considerably below its current generation equivalent while offering a wearing experience and a historical resonance that many collectors find more compelling rather than less. The 16710 was produced from 1989 to 2007 and represents the GMT Master II at its most classically resolved, the 40mm oyster case, the red and blue aluminum insert bezel, and the clean, purposeful dial layout that defines the GMT Master visual identity in the configuration that long predates the ceramic bezel era and carries with it a warmth of character and a directness of design that the current generation's technical improvements do not entirely replace. The red and blue Pepsi bezel of the 16710, rendered in aluminum rather than the Cerachrome ceramic of the current 126710 BLRO, carries a color vibrancy and a tactile quality entirely its own. And the slightly smaller crown guards of this reference give it a profile that many wearers find more elegant and more comfortable than the larger crown protection architecture of subsequent generations. The caliber 3185 within, updated to the 3186 with parachrome hairspring and later production examples, is a Rolex manufactured GMT movement of genuine quality and proven long-term reliability, whose performance in properly serviced examples remains entirely excellent. On a Jubilee or Oyster bracelet, the 16710 Pepsi is the GMT Master that started the legend, and buying one today means acquiring a piece of authentic Rolex professional watch history at a price that the current market, for once, genuinely rewards. Available pre-owned for approximately $9,500 to $2,500 USD. Number 4. Rolex Daytona 11/16/500 LN white dial. Number 4. Rolex Daytona 11/16/500 LN white dial. The Rolex Daytona reference, 11/16/500 LN in white dial, is the most striking and most visually powerful configuration of the most coveted production chronograph in the world. A watch whose black Cerachrome ceramic bezel and brilliant white dial create a contrast of such graphic intensity and such immediate visual impact that it has become, among the two dial options available in this reference, the configuration that generates the longer waiting lists, the higher pre-owned premiums, and the more passionate collector advocacy. The white dial of the 11/16/500 LN is not merely a color preference, it is a fundamental transformation of the watch's entire visual character. Where the black dial Daytona presents a unified monochromatic composition of depth and restraint, the white dial version creates a chromatic tension between the brilliant white dial surface and the deep black ceramic bezel that elevates the watch's presence on the wrist to something considerably more dramatic and considerably more immediately arresting. The three black chronograph subdials set against the white main dial create a visual hierarchy of clarity and contrast that the greatest racing chronograph designers of the 20th century would have recognized and admired, and the overall composition achieves a balance between technical instrument and refined luxury that is entirely characteristic of what the Daytona has always been at its best. The black Cerachrom tachymeter bezel, scratch-resistant, fade-proof, and produced to a precision of ceramic sintering that the earlier aluminum bezels could not approach, provides both functional racing chronograph capability and a material quality statement that communicates the 11/16/500 LN's position as the current production pinnacle of the Daytona lineage. The caliber 4130 manufacture chronograph movement with column wheel, vertical clutch, and 72-hour power reserve is Rolex's own and represents years of engineering development investment. The Rolex Daytona 11/16/500 LN white dial retails for approximately $16,550 USD. Number 3. Rolex Daytona Zenith 16520. The Rolex Daytona Zenith reference. 16520 is one of the most historically important and most collector-revered watches in the entire Rolex catalog. A reference whose significance in the evolution of the Daytona story is enormous, whose mechanical heritage is extraordinary, and whose status among serious Rolex collectors has only grown with the passage of time as the understanding of what it represents has deepened and spread. The 16520 was produced from 1988 to 2000, bridging the transition from the manually wound Valjoux-based Daytonas of the earlier era to the in-house caliber 4130 that followed, and it did so with a movement of remarkable distinction. The Zenith El Primero, one of the finest and most celebrated automatic chronograph movements ever produced, running at 36 0 vibrations per hour rather than the more common 28,800, providing a timing precision and a seconds hand sweep of exceptional smoothness that the El Primero's architecture uniquely enables. Rolex modified the El Primero substantially for use in the 16520, reducing the beat rate to 28,800 vibrations per hour and replacing a number of components. But the essential architecture and the engineering quality of the Zenith caliber remain present and recognizable to those who study it, making the 16520 the only Rolex sports watch ever to house a movement from an outside manufacturer of genuine horological prestige. The 40mm stainless steel case with its pump pushers, its sapphire crystal replacing the earlier acrylic, and its white or black dial options presents the Daytona in a configuration of outstanding classical character that wears with a presence and an authenticity that the collector community has validated emphatically through sustained market demand. The Zenith Daytona is the reference that belongs at the intersection of Rolex history and chronograph excellence, and finding a clean example is one of the great pleasures of serious collecting. Available pre-owned for approximately $18,000 to $28,000 USD. Number 2. Rolex Datejust 36 two-tone diamond dial, 16233. The Rolex Datejust 36 reference, 16233 in two-tone. With diamond dial is one of the most glamorous and most unashamedly luxurious configurations in the entire Datejust family. A watch that takes the classical proportions and enduring design logic of the 36mm Datejust and elevates them through a combination of materials and dial embellishment that transforms the result from an already distinguished dress watch into something approaching the territory of fine jewelry without ever surrendering the Datejust's essential identity as a precision timepiece of the highest mechanical order. The two-tone construction of the 116-233 pairs an oyster steel case and Jubilee bracelet with a yellow gold fluted bezel, a combination that Rolex has produced in various configurations since the earliest years of the Datejust, and that carries with it a warmth and a glamour entirely distinct from the cooler, more restrained character of the all-steel versions. The diamond dial available in the 1162-233 family, whether in champagne, silver, or the deeply striking black configuration, replaces the applied hour markers with individually set diamonds whose brilliance and whose perfectly consistent placement reflect the exacting standards of Rolex's in-house gem-setting operation, elevating the dial surface from beautifully finished to genuinely jewelry quality. The Jubilee bracelet in two-tone carries the watch's precious metal accent through to the wrist in a flow of alternating gold and steel links that moves with a suppleness and a luxurious weight entirely characteristic of the configuration. The caliber 3135 within provides the superlative chronometer performance and the long-term reliability that the Datejust's reputation as a lifetime companion demands. The 11/233 in diamond dial is the Datejust for those who understand that elegance and spectacle are not competing values. Available pre-owned for approximately $8,500, $12,000 USDC. Number 1. Rolex Air King 11/900. The Rolex Air King reference, 11/900, takes the top position on today's list, and in doing so, claims a place that the watch has earned not through prestige, not through complication, and not through the kind of market frenzy that surrounds its more commercially celebrated stablemates, but through something rarer and more enduring. A design of complete and absolute conviction that knows precisely what it is, refuses to be anything else, and executes that singular identity to a standard of quality that the Rolex manufacturer applies to every reference in its catalog, regardless of its position in the pricing hierarchy. The Air King is the Rolex that divides casual opinion and unites serious collectors. A watch whose bold black dial with its oversized Arabic numerals at 3, 6, and 9, its distinctive yellow-tipped seconds hand, and its uncompromising rejection of decorative elaboration creates a composition of such graphic certainty and such purposeful directness that it demands a response from every person who encounters it. There is no neutral ground with the Air King. You either understand immediately what it is doing and find it compelling beyond almost anything else Rolex makes, or you pass it over in favor of something more conventionally appealing and return to it months or years later with the sudden realization that you have been wrong about it from the beginning. The dial's aviation instrument panel heritage is not a decorative reference. It is the entire design logic of the watch, applied without dilution or apology.